So, before we even start this video, I have a little issue here. You see this? My boy Margins Oob. Let me know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Alright, so he hasn't updated in like 3 weeks. That's perfectly fine, but what is not perfectly fine is he only has four other likes on this video and 4 dislikes. When I first saw this, I was like, okay, I'm going to like this video to make sure it's not like that split. I'm gonna give the like ratio a little edge over the dislike ratio, and he only has like 63 subscribers if you don't include me, which I find to be a bit of an issue here. In no way did he ask me to do this either, so don't even try putting that up. My issue is that he provides good content. It's just that he needs to build up his confidence more and stop using copyrighted music in his videos. I think he's actually stopped doing that as well. Plus, the guy also seems to, well, not seems to, but he actually has much more visual content than I do. When I say that, I mean, hold up. Hold up. Oh my gosh. So, wait a minute. He knows how to edit, okay? He knows how to make good editing. You see what I mean by better visual content, so you can actually like just watch the video as well rather than looking at one still image. So that's an issue right there. How can you just have him just sit at 64 subscribers? At least get him to 100 subscribers first. And that's the first thing I wanted to really say. Also, hold on. Subscribe to Headhunters Edits. Anyways, let's get into the actual video. Now, just looking from this picture alone, you know what if this is. What if? Yeah, this what if. You know what kind of video this is. What if Deku was Red Hood Part 3, baby? Oh, jeez. Someone on Discord actually DM'd me asking about it as well, and I was like, okay, so a couple of people have been asking me about this video, and so many people have actually been asking about this, and now that I've changed up how I do my style, I figured, you know what? I'm gonna release this video. I'm going to do a what if. I'm going to bring back up this what if. Anyway, so the last I left on this what if, so yeah, Deku was brought back to life by All for One and the Doctor. I don't remember his name, and I'm not going to research it. Just let me know in the comments below. Deku was able to escape though, and on top of that, he was able to see what was really happening out in the world, what happened after his death. Now he's seeing so many different vigilantes dressed up as knockoff versions of him. When he first saw this, he found this to be pretty interesting until he saw how much more brutal these guys were. Like, these guys were basically about to kill some of these people if we didn't step in. If it's one thing, if it's one thing that people had to admit, Deku never went so far as to kill someone. Jeez, that was plain brutal, even for his standards. Okay, anyways, like what I said, it was pretty brutal, but he figured that he should make his appearance made known. He should make his arrival known to the public eye. He was actually watching some TV with several news reports talking about how these vigilantes were still on the streets. Heroes were trying to put in their best efforts to contain them. But with so many vigilantes on the run, dressed up as the deceased Red Hood, it was hard to get a count of them. Especially with how some of them were quirkless, so it was that not even the heroes could really have authority to arrest them either. That was in the police's line of work. But for some reason, somehow, these quirkless vigilantes, they somehow got their hands on some weapons. Not just weapons, but some strength enhancers as well. Yes, some of them were using steroids or other methods in order to make themselves stronger than what they would normally be, making it extremely difficult for the police to actually contain them in order to actually arrest them. There was a whole riot happening on the scene as well. The news reporter was actually, oh jeez. The news reporter was actually grabbed by one of the vigilantes, and they had the crowbar in one hand. Suddenly, the news station cuts off. What Izuku saw was that this whole Red Hood thing, it had gone way out of hand. He needed to make himself known, and quickly too. So, what ended up happening was that Izuku grabbed his suit, grabbed his gear, loaded his weapons, and headed out into the night. Now, Izuku was a smart kid. He, at least in this what if, when it came on to his physical stance, he had a lot of endurance actually. He was able to take on correct individuals like there was no tomorrow. The only reason why he lost that last time was because of some dirty tactics, and he got too cocky at the time. He wasn't going to allow that to happen again. He was able to modify his gear to such an extent that it is what you see now, the Arkham Knight suit. Deku was able to get his hands on some gear, some new equipment, and was able to detain some of the knockoffs, and some of those that were going too far. Then one night, he was able to find someone new on the scene. At first, he thought he was an incredibly bad ripoff of him, until he stated that his name was Stain. He had katanas. He had katanas and several other forms of blades like knives and daggers, and even spiked boots. He was about to. He was actually about to kill a pro hero, but Izuku actually shot a bullet at Stain. Stain was able to not dodge it, but deflect the bullet quick enough so that he wouldn't get injured. When Stain took a good look at Izuku, he was intrigued. Not really intrigued, but just he was apathetic towards Izuku. He didn't really care for the boy because all he saw was just another another knockoff of the original Red Hood, but with an actually good suit this time around. He was about to He was about to actually charge Izuku and kill him because he found all these vigilantes to be fake, not real heroes. They were just doing this for attention. They were glory hogs. They wanted to use this poor vigilante's grave. They wanted to use his death as a way to feel important. Try and use his death in order to actually pursue their own goals, their own selfish desires. He'd seen the news as well. Some of these riots, these people were breaking into stores, talking about how this is what Red Hood wanted. No. No, this is not what Red Hood wanted. He was one of the few true heroes out there who was actually trying to make a change here. He saw the reports. When he first found out that Red Hood was actually quirkless as well, this just left him in shock. He never thought that a quirkless person would be able to make it so far up that he would gain so much attention. He would gain so much attention that even some of the top pro heroes had to acknowledge him. He was on the news stations constantly. So to find out that he was quirkless brought a whole new respect for him in Stain's eyes. Stain saw him as even more of a true hero than even All Might, willing to take the extra measures, in order to actually make a difference in the world. He respected that. And seeing these people trying to tarnish his memory angered Stain. This was part of the reason why he became known as Stain the Hero Killer as well in this What If. Izuku was able to actually pistol whip Stain though this time around. And Stain actually trying to continuously attack Izuku, but Izuku, thanks to his armored equipment and what do you call it? And not only his experience, but reflexes as well. He was actually able to block some of Stain's attacks. Other attacks, his armor would actually stop it from penetrating into his skin. Izuku was able to actually push Stain off of him, wondering why he was attacking a pro hero in the first place. He decided to bring a gun up to Stain's face and pistol whip him again, asking him why. Why exactly was he going after a pro hero trying to attack them? What was his reason for this? Stain spat at Izuku though, talking about how they were all fakes. All of these heroes, all these vigilantes such as him that were on the streets currently. They were all fakes in Stain's eyes. The only people he found to be true heroes, the real deal, were All Might and the Red Hood. But ever since Red Hood's unfaithful demise, all of a sudden these people started sprouting up in the streets, trying to tarnish his name. Izuku understood what Stain was saying, though. He agreed. He agreed partly with what Stain was saying. Yes, what was happening in the streets right now was out of hand. It was way too out of hand, actually. He was going to put a stop to this. Stain looked at him in confusion before laughing. How exactly was another ripoff going to put a stop to this? He was just adding to it. That was when Izuku took off his mask. These people already knew the identity of the original Red Hood anyways, so there was no point in really hiding his identity. The only reason he was able to get away the last time, though, was because it was raining and his face was a bit obscured from the rain. When Stain saw who was under the mask, his jaw dropped. But, dude, hold up. This don't make no sense. This was what was going on in Stain's eyes, actually. Stain's eyes. In Stain's mind. But you're supposed to be dead. This was what Stain was trying to say. But Izuku said, well, I was supposed to be, but apparently somebody brought me back to life. Don't ask how, because I don't even know how either. I just know that I now have a second chance at life, and I'm going to fix this whole mess. That was what Izuku told Stain. He told Stain to leave that hero alone. Stain explained that this guy was a fake hero, though. Izuku asked how, though. Stain went on to explain that, well, most heroes were fakes because they were either in it for the money, the fame, or a mixture of both. But Izuku didn't ask him that. He asked, what did this hero do? Stain growled, trying to explain, but Izuku constantly cut him off whenever he mentioned heroes, not this hero in particular. Stain sighed before saying that he would leave him alone. To make sure of this, though, Izuku actually... this is a very brutal what if. This is one of the darkest what ifs I've probably done on this channel. He put the gun, if you're wondering which gun, a Desert Eagle. He put the Desert Eagle up to Stain's head and told him to walk with him. Stain was also told to drop his weapons as well. When they made it out of the alleyway, they already saw the police. The police were telling Izuku to drop his weapons as well. Izuku didn't listen. The cops told him to put his hands up in the air, drop the weapon, get down on his knees so that they could arrest him for his vigilante work. Until somebody realized something. Wait a minute. That face, it looks familiar. Did somebody use some sort of reanimation quirk or something? What kind of sick fiend would do such a thing? Before Izuku stated that, no, he was actually the original Red Hood. He was going to make a deal with the police. Put him on the news. Put him on the news so that he can tell the whole world that he is back. That the vigilante Red Hood was back and he didn't plan on dying again. He was going to fix this whole mess. He would be even willing to team up with the heroes in order to fix this mess that's been going on in the streets. The police didn't. Where was I? So yeah, Deku was going to put a stop to this. He was going to make things right this time around. And he was also going to save that little girl as well. The police brought him to the police station, of course, to be interrogated by Detective Tsukachi. Or at least, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm not quite sure. Basically, the detective with the lie detector quirk. Izuku went on to explain what happened to him. And Detective Tsukachi listened to every word, writing down these words, trying to detect if he was lying at any point. He was shocked to find out that Izuku's whole story, although hard to believe, was completely true. This was what threw people for a loop. Detective Tsukachi at first was thinking of arresting Izuku for his crimes, but looking at his age, he was fairly young. He was barely a teen, honestly. He wasn't even 16 yet. So, what Izuku had tried to implement into several people's minds before, trying to get him onto the news stations, the detective agreed with Izuku. Things were getting way too out of hand. The heroes were barely able to manage these vigilantes anymore. It wasn't so bad at first, but now there were so many riots going on. And quite a few of them were quickly, so the heroes technically were out of their domain trying to arrest these vigilantes, saying that they knew their rights. They even went on to try and sue some of these heroes, saying that they were quirkless. These heroes had no right to arrest them. Of course, these cases were thrown out, but it really started to mess with the people. The more cases, the more vigilantes, and it just kept on going, this vicious cycle going on. Detective Tsukachi trying to get the news stations to Detective Tsukachi ended up going to the news stations with Izuku. And when the news stations heard this, when news reporters heard this, they were intrigued to say the very least. Especially when Tsukachi connected with the number one hero, All Might, in order to make sure this was broadcasted. With All Might's influence on the world, if All Might were to just walk up to a news station be like, okay, so I want you to broadcast this. Broadcast me picking my nose for 12 hours straight. And they would do it in a heartbeat, okay? So something and so such an outrageous request such as this, with All Might's influence, with All Might's position in the world, or at least in Japan, they didn't hesitate at all to broadcast Izuku on live TV. All of the channels, everybody was watching something. Anybody who was watching the news at the time, and this automatically switched to Izuku, who was being broadcasted. He took off his helmet to show that it was indeed the original Red Hood. Izuku Midoriya, aka Red Hood, was alive and still kicking. He was going to make sure that society was going to be fixed. He was going to be teaming up with some of these heroes in order to make sure that some of these vigilantes were stopped, because he noticed that these guys were becoming too brutal now. That these guys were getting out of hand. Some of these people were just using his memory in order to get their own desires. He'd seen them. He had noticed these people before, and he was growing sick of it. He is growing sick of these people tarnishing his memory. Now that he was alive again, he was going to make the world a better place, whether they wanted it or not. He didn't care, because these people already messed up society, making it so that quirkless people were looked down upon. Now that they were the minority, he had shown that quirkless people were still a threat to be reckoned with. Now, he was going to show that you do not mess with the Red Hood. You do not change the legacy of the Red Hood. Now he was coming back. He was coming back, now known as now he was going to come back and become a proper hero this time around. He was going to be the first quirkless person to make it into the UA and get his hero license. And on top of that, he was going to rescue that poor girl. He was going to make her his life's mission in order to save this one little girl. How could he expect to become a hero? How could he expect to even dare call himself a hero, or a vigilante at the very least, if he couldn't save one fragile girl who was being abused by these Yakuza members? He didn't know why. He didn't know why they were doing the things they were doing to this poor girl. All he knew is that they were sickos. They were scum. They were beyond forgivable in his eyes. Those were some of the few people he was going to be willing to kill. When people first saw this, quite a few were in outrage, saying that this was not the original Red Hood. How dare they try and tarnish his memory, even though Izuku mentioned how they were already doing it themselves, going around playing vigilante like it was child's play or something, when it really wasn't. On top of that, some people were trying to say that this was not only a ploy for the heroes to actually put an end to this vigilante tirade. Am I using that word correctly? Hold on. Yeah, I don't care if I didn't use that word correctly. It sounds cool. So there were a couple accusations going around, but as as time went by, more and more people started to accept that Azuku was once again kicking, that he was alive once again, that the Red Hood was back, and he was back with a vengeance. The first thing that Azuku did was, of course, to rescue the poor little girl, Eri. Azuku busted down the Yakuza facility doors. He didn't care that he was pretty reckless here. He didn't care that he didn't have enough evidence to target Chisaki or whatever that guy's name was. He was going to kill him. He he hated this guy with every fiber of his being. He was Bakugo on steroids, in his opinion. How could he do such a thing? This guy was a heartless monster. Why should he show any sort of emotion towards such a person, if you could even call him that? He shot at the several Yakuza members. He didn't care what they were going to do. He was going to attack and defeat them. He ended up even canceling out their quirks. He learned something along the way during his vigilante run. Chi blocking. Yes, you heard that right. Chi blocking. It was able to cancel out people's quirks, make it so that they weren't able to use their quirks. He was basically like a race ahead in this sense. These people couldn't use their quirks at the time. But he was still able to fight. He was able to knock out some of these people, doing some of the most brutal styles to be known to man, going so far as to use liver punches as well, immediately knocking out some of his opponents. He shot at their arms, feet, and everywhere in between, if you get my gist. A group of heroes who wanted to go with Izuku as well, they followed him. They weren't the strongest, far from it. But as long as Izuku had some backup, he was going to be good. He needed it during this time. He even got some help from some vigilantes, some other well-known vigilantes such as Pop, Step. At least I think I'm pronouncing my name right. Koichi and Knuckle Duster. Those three he was able to get help from. These three were able to knock out some of the thugs as well. Making it so that the attention wasn't so focused on Izuku during this time. Some of these heroes that were with Izuku as well, some of them had some pretty interesting quirks. Even Mount Lady was with them at the time as well. She wanted to do it for publicity at first, but when she really found out how there was a little girl in danger who was being tortured by these wicked men, her heart went out to the little girl. She had a heart after all. So all of them went in, busting down the Yakuza doors, making it so that they were able to infiltrate the whole base of operations, and Izuku was able to find Overhaul, conducting some work. Needless to say, Izuku immediately shot at him. Overhaul didn't even get a chance to think before Izuku. Think about it. Overhaul didn't really even get a chance to take off his glove before Izuku already shot several bullets at him, unloading a whole pistol worth of bullets at Overhaul. Overhaul, in a quick second, immediately ripped off his glove before he was about to die, before he was about to bleed out, and reconstructed himself, fixing himself so that he was back to 100%. Izuku growled before he charged in at Overhaul. Some of the heroes that were with him at the time, some of them had some interesting quirks as well. Some were able to fly, some were able to... Actually, there was this one hero that was with Izuku as well, Snipe. He was able to do some heavy damage, being able to use bullets as well, being able to use these guns as weapons. In order to actually use his quake, he was able to change his. He was able to change the trajectory of his bullets as well. So one bullet, he just had to shoot one bullet. Next thing you know, boom, he's able to use that bullet to wound a person multiple times at once. He was able to do that to Chisaki, at least greatly annoying the man during the process, as he would continuously have to repair himself. It hurt every single time though. Izuku didn't care how much pain Chisaki felt. He was going to clobber him. He went at him blow per blow. And Chisaki didn't even get a chance to touch Izuku. Izuku made sure to be cautious around him. He shot at Chisaki. He shot at Overhaul, for those who aren't familiar with the name Chisaki. He wasn't even able to touch Izuku. He grabbed the man's hands and broke his arms in the process, making him almost completely useless during this time. Izuku grabbed the blade, and before Chisaki was able to use the momentum and touch himself again, that sounds so weird. Before he was able to touch any part of his body again in order to reconstruct himself, Izuku grabbed one of his broken arms, and this is probably one of the most brutal parts of this what if. He cut off Overhaul's fingers, and then he cut off his arm. More specifically, his hand. He cut off Overhaul's hand. Then he pinned him down to the ground, doing the same to his other hand. He realized that the little girl was watching, terrified. He ordered for one of the heroes to grab Eri and get her out of here so that she wouldn't have to witness the rest of these horrific actions, to say the very least. Izuku, needless to say, was very brutal on Overhaul, pinning him down to the ground, stomping on his body, kicking him, and then crushing his windpipes, crushing his neck, crushing his throat. He breathed heavily. before he collapsed from the adrenaline rush. That is part 3 of What If Deku was Red Hood. This is probably the most brutal part to it yet. And I'm not sure how much more brutal I'm going to get with this story. All I know is that if YouTube decides to take out one of these, I'm gonna be laughing on the floor, okay? So remember, to do what I asked in this video, go subscribe to Maj and Zoob. Go subscribe to Headhunters Edits. Remember to like this video, share, subscribe. Oh, and comment on this video. Let me know what you want to see in the Let me know what you want to see in the next video as well. Besides that, King Titan X out. Gave me 200 subs, by the way. I'm going to start uploading more frequently. And that's all I gotta say. King Titan X out.